All right, so we're going to do a little bit of coding. As I said, the coding experience varies a lot in here. So if you're not comfortable with doing much, it can be fairly simple, or you can do a little bit more. Um, but basically, the idea is like to take a couple of, not there, but here, things that you diagrammed, and just actually try to convert those to Python code. If you really wanted to do Java or something else, you could. But Python is what most people have had, so I've been focusing on Python. So I'm going to show some ways to do that, but are there questions before I go on? You look like you have questions. Hi. So when you look at these, I mean, basically what I want to know is, can you translate a diagram into code? This is still not dealing with the fact whether or not this is the ideal diagram for these classes. I'm not going to worry too much about that. The other part of this is how they communicate, which is what this is. Although this is communication for a different set of classes that I did. Right? This is the item and the inventory, the order item and the order. I guess one of the things that I will say when I show you this code, we did this last time, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. If you really don't have much experience or kind of uncomfortable coding, you could probably just adapt this a little bit, because it's really a lot like your order. You have your item, which could be a menu item, your menu, your order item, and your order, right? So that's sort of the basic structure of what you would do. And I'm gonna show you a little bit, just try to move a little bit from the code into the model and just show you a little what I'm trying to talk about. Part of it is I want you to have some code so we can do some testing too. Testing is an important part of all of this. Questions? Let me know, because I don't necessarily feel like I'm making clear sense right now. All right, so what I have, last time, remember we downloaded these classes, and I'll go over those, and then I also have classes that we can download that go directly with my diagrams, so the lock ones. So we have here an item. So when you do an item, maybe we could draw the classes for these and you can kind of see how they relate. We've got, these would be the fields, right? Mostly item number, item name, item price. And then these are the methods. So if we were to do this as a diagram real quick, I'm not going to do this with everyone, but just to show a quick example. So let's go back. I will go documents, UML, blank, create document. Okay, so if I bring in a class diagram, so this would be a class for the item. The fields would be what? The attributes. There was item number, item name, item price, right? So if we go back, so item number, and you don't have to give these data types, although you could. Item name and item price. So those are the fields, right? And they get directly translated here. Now you should do the diagrams before you do the code, although a lot of times in real life they do go backwards, because there's two things that the diagrams are good for. One is to think it through and figure out what you're doing. The other is to document what you've done, right? So we have those three fields. We have a get for each one in a string. So if I go back here, we could do, if you were to do each of these, it could be, actually these should all be minus. Not that it matters a whole lot. Because they're not accessible except through the gets. So we had get number. I might have said get item number. Get item name. And get item price. The other method that we had, and this is, they don't always, I'll just say they don't always do like these in the diagrams, is we had a string method. And sometimes they don't do these. All right, they don't necessarily, they just assume they're gets and sets. But it's probably not a good idea to always assume that. So this is the same thing as this, right? So we have a class called item. It has the three fields, three attributes: item name, item price, item number. These things describe an item. These are things that just allow another class to get it back, to get those items out of there, those attributes out. And then the string is just something that we can return when the class is string. So if I do, let me move this up. We could do like a test. I'm going to do Python. This may not work on slow. I'm writing over there and the one right here. This may not work on some of yours. Some of you, the paths were wrong. You guys had a path problem, right? Yeah. So, but I'm in the Python thing. If you could still get there, but you'd have to go back to where it was installed and create the whole path out. But it's not important. I'm just going to do import or from item. Import item. So we're importing the class. Why did I not find it? Item pi is there. Should see it. If it doesn't work, we won't do from item. Actually, I don't know what directory I'm in. I'm in sales items. Should work. Actually, it's sales item. I'm just looking at where I sales items, sales example, sales item. I think it's sales example again. I'm going to exit real quickly. I think it's bedded really deep. And let's bring that to the top if I can. I don't know if I can. clear isn't DOS. What is it? It's CLR, I thought. CLS. There we go. Clear screen. I've been using Linux so much that I've forgotten my DOS commands. So. All right, so I'm going to do Python. Again, you guys don't have to do this. The only point is I wanted to show you what the toString does. So I'm going to import or from item, import item. Okay, and then I'm going to say item equals item with a capital. And item has 3 arguments that go in, a number. It has a name. And it had a price. Okay, so if I do print item, this is the toString. It shows item 1, which is the name. That's what the toString thing does, right? If you don't do that, if I were to get rid of that toString, then it would just say object 1.
Can you show us the toString again?
Right here. Now in Java, it actually says toString. But in Python, it's got that underscore underscore str. It's the same thing. That makes sense? It's useful because that way you get something back. Now, if I were to comment this out, and save, I think I'd have to re-import item. So let me bring this back up. This time I'm just going to do, well, I guess I'll do it again, equals. I'm going to do the same thing. All right, so now I'm going to print it. And the print thing is gone. Well, it did it again because I think it's the same thing. Let's exit. And then have to do it again. It's still reading the original item. Can I copy? All right, so this is what it prints normally. Can you see it? It's way down there. It prints item object at, and it gives the memory address of the item, which is actually problematic. Because it gives you the hex address where it's stored. Okay, that's what it does by default if you don't give it a toString. All right. So in terms of the, did you need to see that again? That was just sort of a test thing to see. So is it pretty clear the relation between the diagram? The string was an extra thing. You have your fields, right? Your attributes it calls on your fields. And then you have your memories. And we could do, like some of these others are, you know, an order consists of order items. So it has this would be a field. It might be the only field in here because all we have is a list of order items. and then it has two methods. So that would be an easy one to draw if we were to. So this is order. And I'll just do it real quickly. Again, just trying to show the relation between these. Order item. It's only got one attribute, which is order items as a list. And I usually put a square brackets when it's a list, but you don't have to. It had two things, which were add order item, which would take an item in here and a couple of other things, but we won't do it. And then it had, what was the other method? Calc total, which it calculates the total. Basically goes through the list and totals everything. So if you had a real simple, I mean, if you had a class like that, it would translate into an object in code that looks somewhat like this. Notice I didn't pass anything in here except self, too. So the init, remember what it is? It's the initialization of the constructor of the class. So all I'm looking for in the assignment is basically to take a couple of your classes and so let's go back to the class. A couple of the classes that you wrote and translate that into the code. They don't even have to work together for your assignment. It's a lot more fun if they do, but you can test a class, because we're going to do testing next. You can test it even if it doesn't do anything, right? You can test this method. So you could add a few items real quickly, and then you could see if the calculation works. I mean, there are ways to test just a class by itself. And we'll do that. That's the next assignment, but this one is that. I'm going to give you a couple more examples of different coding things. But I just want you to, before you panic, to say that the minimum assignment is just to take a couple of diagrams and turn them into Python. That would be enough for the assignment. You're welcome to do more. It's more fun to do more. But that's it. That will be enough for the assignment. Does that make sense?
So basically just create the objects in code.
Right, just create, yeah. And if you have like most of you have like 4. Some of you have 5 or 6. If you have 5 or 6, if you want to make them all great, if you want to make 3 of them, that's okay too, if they're kind of the core ones or whatever. They're not hard to do. It's not hard to translate them into code. It could be a little bit hard to make the methods work, right? To do the calculations, to do the stuff that's inside the methods. So, but most of your methods will be things like get, just get the field value or whatever. And I can help you. We can refine it. Give it a shot, and then we can fix the little things. All right, so you remember this one. We had, this one, as I said, is the closest to yours. And I'll walk through it real quickly, and then we'll kind of run it. And then I'll show you the one that goes with our sample one with the locks. And then I will quit talking and let you guys do this. And there's only one more thing left after this, which is just the testing. And I'll show you how to set up the unit tests. Probably on Tuesday. Do you guys want me to do it on Thursday instead? Tuesday. Tuesday's probably okay. It won't take very long, and that'll give you the days. Thursday, though, I'm not sure. We may or may not have presentations on Thursday. All right. So what I have here, just to show you we have the item. So I told you that. So that's just basically the item. This could be your menu item if you wanted. It'd be very similar to this. I do have an inventory which has a list of items. This thing would work perfectly well without the inventory, but I figured there should be an inventory. So in the inventory, I just have a list of items. I have a thing so you can add items. And then I have basically a search where you can get the item by its number. Now, if I were really to do this, build this out, I'd probably have add item, edit item, remove item. And when something is purchased, I want to remove, the quantity, it's reduce the quantity or whatever. But all I have right now is just to add the item and then find the item by its number.
Steve, when you say you have these, are they in your blog?
They're on GitHub.
Yeah.
We downloaded them last time, I think. If not, you can get them. I'm going to show you how to get the other. Some of you, the Git clone didn't work, and I still haven't figured out why. But we'll get another one in a moment. Any questions on this? So we have the item. And then and the inventory. And then we had the order item. The order item just has the item and the quantity. So it actually takes an item in it. So it has all the content of an item. This is one where we did it by aggregation. And the reason it's aggregation is we're passing an object into here. And we're storing that object internal to it. The other way you could do it is inheritance, right? You could just inherit item. Order item is just a special kind of item. You could just do inheritance. Both work. Which is better? As I said, I did it as aggregation partially because I read some article somewhere, whether they were right or wrong, basically saying inheritance was overused. So I did it as aggregation, but it doesn't really matter. It has an item, and then it has a quantity. We get the item, right? So that lets us, it returns the item. And that item is a complex bundle, right? It has three things in it. It has the name, the price, and the number. So it's nice to pass things around as chunks rather than to have to pass a bunch of individual values. It's one of the advantages of objects. And then the only thing is we're adding to the item is a quantity. So as I said, inheritance, if we had lots of time, I would do that to show you how inheritance works there. And that's all there is. And there's no toString here. I didn't do anything to output for it. And then the order we looked at before is just a collection of order items. It's just a list of order items. So, and then we can add order items here. And then we can do a calculation for the total by basically looping through those order items and totaling the price times the quantity. That's what this does. It gets the item from the order item, and it gets the price times the quantity.
Steve?
Yeah.
I think I half my folders and files wrong for this. Where can I start over?
All right, I'll show you in just a second. And then I just wanted to show you there's a payment. I'm not sure the payment needed to be an object, and then I'll show you where it is. I made a separate object for payment, but basically it's just a complicated string that says your payment today will be and gives you the amount. So, and then the last thing I did was a test run, and there's different ways to do this. I'm going to show you a different one in a moment. This just creates a main. So it creates three different items, soap, cookies, and milk. I don't know why those three items. So it creates an inventory object and adds those three items to the inventory. Okay, then it adds those, takes those items and adds them to order items and gives them a quantity. So that's what we're doing here. Those are order items. We add those order items to the thing. And you know, there would, rather than hard coding these, there would be some kind of kiosk or front end that would be doing it, right? And then we calculate the payment by calling the calc total, and then I print the payment. And remember, the payment had that string in there. So if I do, I'm not sure how this, let's see, I'm gonna, the easiest way to run this, first I'm gonna do the CLS. The easiest way to run it is probably to debug, start debugging, Python file. And it says that the payment today will be 14.5. And I've looked at that a couple of times. I'm pretty sure it's calculating it right. Okay, so let me show you where this was. And then we'll walk through one more example. And then, as I said, we'll let you go. So, I don't think I actually made the link here. Let's go here. So this is GitHub, my GitHub. Don't want that one though. So this one was the sales examples. And then there's the next one I'm going to look at is the lock example. And I'm going to show you one way to download it, and you can do the same with sales examples. I'll show you a couple ways to download it. Why is it waiting for, okay, so I'm going to get I'm going to copy the URL for this. And I'm going to, right here, I don't know if you can see it, this little gear, the settings thing down here. There's a thing there that's called, at the top, the command palette. It literally has all the commands, including ones that aren't in the menus. And I'm going to do git clone. It may not be at the top. It's there because I called it not long ago. But if you just type, if you just type git, you'll have several options, and then git clone. And then if I put,
Still says git clone.
yeah, so some of you had that, and I don't know why. I'll show you another way to get it. So I'm going to do git clone, and I don't know why I have it and you don't. I'm going to press enter, and then it tells me to find a place to put it. And I'm going to put it in documents. I'll put it in, do I want to put it in Python files? Yeah, let's just put it in documents. So I'm going to select repository and then open. All right, so if you don't have the git clone, and I need to look and see why that could be on some of yours, you can always download it. So you can try to clone it. So one, if you have the bash command line, you can, the git command line, you can just download it with the command line on the Windows. Failing that, if you download the zip file and then just unzip it, it should also work.
That gives me the sale examples master.
That would be all right.
Okay. But if I wanted to set it up the same way that you have it, hold the sale examples out of the master.
You could. Does it matter if it's in the master or not? The master would mean it makes it easier if you wanted to post it back up, but you probably don't want to do that.
Just drag that over the documents or wherever.
Yeah. But I mean, if failing that, you can always just download the zip and it'll bring you all of the files. And then you can unzip it and you'll have them all. So the reason why it does master is you're cloning from mine. It's to keep versions distinct. All right, so I downloaded this.
Do I need to read them?
No, that's a Django thing. There's lots. I think there's 101 different repositories there. We really only want this one, I think. I should get rid of some of them. There's a lot of stuff there that's really old. So what I have here is I have the lock. And if we want, we can look at our diagram. I'm going to go back. So I had location, status, and security level. And then I had to get status, set status, get security level. So what do I have here? I think it's pretty close. I did pass in the door. I'm not sure the door, the lock number, it could be a door, lock number, whatever. But I have door location I added. I don't know if that's in the diagram. Security level, and then status. And I set this initial status as locked. Does that make sense? The rest of it is just get the status, or set the status, because you're going to have to be able to change it. So there's actually a set and get here. And then let us see the status. Get the door, get the location, get the security level, and then a string which basically gives the door number and the status. Does that make sense? And again, the goal here is look at the diagram and then kind of see how the code, how that diagram translates to code. They are so close to code that in a lot of environments, including Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code, but Visual Studio, the full thing, if you draw a diagram, it will create the code. It doesn't put content in the methods, but it'll give you all the method names and data types. And it's all there. You just have to go in and fill in the line.
Where do you draw that in?
What?
Where do you draw it?
So if you have the full Visual Studio, there's usually a thing where you can right-click and say class diagrams. And if you draw a class diagram, it will write the code. There's got to be some, I think there's some Java interfaces that'll do the same. Somebody said, there's some IDEs anyway that will do that for you, that if you draw the class, it'll write the stub, basically, the code without the. Questions on this? Does this make sense? You know, again, basically the fields that are at the top of your diagram and then any methods. As you actually code things, you usually, at least I usually find that I left things out of my diagrams. A good thing to do would be to update the diagram to go with it so that they match. I'm not always good at doing that. So this is my lock class, and it's basically just fields. The only really active, I mean, these are all just returning values. The only thing that's a little different is set, because I will need to unlock the door, right? And the status is whether it's locked or unlocked. I did a scan. And again, a scan is basically just creates the lock. If the scan gets the lock and has the card number, and then it has the date. That's really the big differences. So I'm passing in all the stuff that goes into the lock plus the card number. And then I'm just assigning the date time to this instant, right? Date time now. And then down here is just 3 gets. Get the lock, get the card, get the scan time. I'm not saying that this is a brilliant thing either. There's probably all sorts of things I should probably include or leave out. But this is what I did. I'll show you how it works in a minute. But questions on that? Does that make sense? That'd be a pretty, I mean, we could look at the diagram. Did I have scan in my diagram? So I had card number, lock, and timestamp. So that's exactly it. And then I had the gets and sets. Just gets, actually. Okay. I think I did. I'm trying to figure out where do I go next. I think I went to the scanner, right? So one of the things is the scan is passed to the scanner. The scan is the content from the scanner. And then we pass that scan to the validator where we validate it. So notice we create the validator and then we pass it to the validator. And it returns a Boolean, true. If it's true, we unlock the door, and if it's false, we leave it locked. And that's actually one of the, that's about it, right? Just if result equals true, unlock, else lock. And we're doing it in the lock, set status. Questions? Does that make sense? Because again, I'm just kind of showing you how these things could work a little bit. So that's the scan. Let's look at the validate. I hard-coded the permissions. These would come from, so permission, let's look at permission. For permission right now, I just did the door number and the card number. Really, if you wanted to build this out, you would also want to test the time, right? Is the card associated with that door for this date and time? So you'd want to go through and parse out the date and time. I was too lazy to do that. So all I'm checking is does the door and the card match. Does that make sense? And then it just has a get door, get card. So in the validate, what I did is I created 4 permissions. I added them to the add permissions, which is part of this. We have a permissions array. In real life, what you would want to do to populate that or to do this is you'd want to send it to a database, right? And then you'd want to get the match or not match. So because I don't want to set up a database right now, I just made a hard-coded list. Right? That's not uncommon when you're doing proof of concept. Rather than write all the database code, you just create a hard-coded list and test it. And then, when it's working, then you create the database and create the data classes and do that kind of content. So we get the door and we get the card. So we've added all the permissions. And then in here, I initially set the result to false, but then I go through the permissions. And if the door equals the door and the card equals the card, the result equals true, and break out of the loop. Because the next one down, it won't equal anymore. It'll end up false unless it's the last one that's true. And then we return the result. So it just loops through these and sees that the door matches the door, the card matches the card. It would be much more complex, again, if we had to also match the date and the time. And so you'd have a more complicated set of conditions. And again, you don't have to do anything quite this complicated. And yours is probably closer to the other example, but I thought I would do. I think that's covered all of them, right? So I made a run scan. This is kind of like your validate, your kiosk or something. It imports all of the different objects. It gets the imports the validator or makes it. I initialized it right away, and I also called one of the methods in here where I run. So I set a. I have this run, right? So this one sets the scan. It sets the scan up to be what the scan is going to be. This sets up the scanner. This gets the validation. from the scanner. And then down here, when we run, we basically come through. I did a lot of prints. So setting up permissions. And then we're going to print setting up the scan. And then we're going to print what the lock says. And then we're going to validate the scan. And then we're going to get that. And we're going to get that. And then we're going to print the state of the door down here. Does that make sense, sort of? I'm not sure it made sense when I explained it to myself just now. Basically, we're going through all these things. We're going to, we set up the permissions, we set up the scan, which involves the door. We're going to look at the lock, right? See if it's locked or not. And then we're going to send the scan to the validators and see if it matches one of those values. So this sets the scanner above, and then this gets the validation. And then we'll see what the result is. And the start pi is just a main, and it runs the run scan, right? So from here, let's get a terminal. And then we'll start debugging Python. So it says setting up the permissions, setting up the scan, 3176 is locked, sending the scan to the validator, and then we say the door is unlocked because it worked. The scan was good. We could change the scan to make it stay locked. So let's go to the run scan. Take this down. So what I did is I said 3176BE123. So 3176 and 123 is one of the permissions. Why are all my permissions commented out? I obviously did them. Oh well. Let's say 3176 and 234, which doesn't have permissions on that one. Whoa. All right, so I need to save this. What did I do that I didn't like? Did I leave something tied up in there? 234. That looks all right. Oh, you know what? I have to go to make it run, I have to go to start. And it's still throwing an error? No, did just fine. So, setting up permission, setting up scan, the door is locked, and it's still locked because that person didn't have permission. So it works. You could set it up dynamically if you want, where it asks you for these things, but it'd be a lot more work. Questions on that? Does that make any sense to you at all? Does? Yes? No? The point of this is just to show you classes working together. And then, as I said, the assignment is just to take what your diagram has and then just translate it into some Python code. Where we will be going next is to set up some tests. I've got several tests set up, but we'll do more later. We'll do that next time. And I'll make us some more tests, actually. I think that's it. You guys have questions? Just take your diagrams, translate them into Python, and play with it a little bit. See if you can get it to work a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about that. I'm mostly concerned that you take your diagram and adapt it to code. Some, like your diagrams, are really complicated. You might not want to do all of them unless you're really ambitious. Okay, I think that's it for, I'll let you guys work.
I have two questions.
Sure.
Are you talking about the assignment where we initially created this process?
Well, it could be here too. I mean, the thing is that this doesn't really matter when you make the classes. It's telling you how they interact, but that's not a part of the coding. Other than that,
I guess I'm struggling, I don't know which of the assignments, which assignment
so
are
it
we
should
running?
be, but when did the database? Is there that much difference between the relationship? It's the diagram, the class diagram. Objects.
That's what we were just talking about.
Right.
So this would be in class.
So probably.
My other question is, do you have to consider it as a GitHub, or how do you want it?
That's actually a good question. You could do this as a GitHub link, or you could just paste the code into text or a document. If you paste it as text, your indentions will go away, but I'll presume that we're good.
So I think this is the one that you and I were literally just looking
Yeah,
at.
this would be all right. I mean, you got the date items, the order detail, order.
I'm very not smart today. I feel like everyone.
So if you were to make a class of like order and food items,
I'm gonna make a class size, I want that.
sure, you could do all of it, whatever ones of these you want. Just these would be the things that come in at the top. Probably one. That's actually a good idea.
Is it that I just made this very simple at the onset? Is that why this looks like that?
It might be a little, you know, I would tell, I'd have to really go through it. Because they could be something that you have to set.
I like sideboard.
One of the things if you play with it, Sana doesn't require you to try to find out what they do. Yeah. So before you can do
Oh, I bet. I'm sure. Right now, I'm to the seek out and literally extra space.
So you have stuff. That's an example. That's fine.
Yes. No one until 6. I'm thinking I just have
Last time we had the first surfing.
Oh, sure. I
guess whatever I wrote. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna
When you reply on those things, it doesn't automatically.
So, yeah. Now, it should have, yeah. Yeah, but it's-
but yeah,
Myself, I rather not do that.
All right. So, yeah, just do that. Did you get a message about?
No, it's got-
I didn't want to take that call without.
See, this is just good. That just-
Return to this. Did you, hear from, it was a busy day. It was whispering. Somebody in the office, he's like, today's deadline to register. Today's the deadline to pay. And then like, and I feel like there's something happening. Oh. Well, we'll find out tomorrow. So we'll see what happens tomorrow about your committee today. Oh, don't go with her. And it's nothing is resolved. I didn't need tomorrow. There's goodness. I will see you Thursday.
Yeah, so this is a.
Okay.
It's running. I created new plans.
So random.
So what I'm gonna search for is. PS code. So we have to look. In a second. right, I think I see where the thing is. I may not be over there. Possibly you might just want to move it and start it. So just- Okay, you had a question over here. What kind of, I mean, I'll be back. Just, it's happened a lot. Somehow when you clone it, it varies in community filters. I just want to take an example of your so we have one item. Just take one of these and just turn it. So these are just like fluids and these are just like- just to show that you can take it down. Yeah. You can use that. So you just have to drop it out. Well, so these are just the few.
So I have to create all these files.
I said if you could buy it, if you want, I could do just.
So I need to.
You would need to,
How do you even start?
so let's create a favorite. So we could do it over, well, we could just go to the file manager. All right, so we go here. Yeah, do file, I think. Folder. Go to. We could use it. Then we could see if I put a subfolder in there. Or you could go.
I know show as though it's
Is that how you use it? And then just select folder. Right.
Oh.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Let's do.
It says, title here, so I click it. It's also not in your. So, just click on that little. And then so-
I can tell you, because that's the one, that's the reason I was, I can tell you for sure that that was, some of the other stuff.
but just the fact that it's still, this is not one.
Yeah, or I can use.
So I have to log, I have to go into different folders.
Yes. So if we wanted to. Actually, if you do open this. The one that we could have two, we have two, three, the other thing is, you could just back out. So you could just go and open it tomorrow.
Taken on pass.
So what could be very.
Without having everyone else's change. Nothing, and there's change is going to matter.
Right, so.
This is where I'm at right now.
Where are you trying to run it? So first of all, one of the things to do is go to start. On the item, I go to the. And then,
I said, I was trying to.
You're thinking of something different, but I don't know what, I know you were on the same page.
Well, that's just always.
You did the front item, and
Oh,
front
okay,
item.
gotcha.
oh, so to do that, what you would do is just do.
Starting.
course, you totally.
That's what I said afterwards. And then you said
I
something
missed
about
what
no.
she said. I missed what she said. Sorry. That's why.
What's the order?
I think I did.
It's on HBO. I just recently watched it.
Excuse me.
Well, I didn't see it.
We're not actually voting.
One put something on.
That's if you show the. If you show the two-screen.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we're gonna.
Yeah.
It should just show.
It should just show other content. What I was showing is you didn't have screen content. What it shows is the item, the object name.
Okay, I misunderstood. Never mind, there was no
Okay.
issue there.
The, I actually think it's a bad idea. Not sure why Python shows the memory address.
Yeah.
I think that would be a boon to hackers.
Okay, so these, yeah, I thought I was, yeah,
I wonder if it's a side effect. Python is written in C. And C has pointers and stuff. I wonder if that's where that's coming from.
Steve,
Yeah.
do you have a class diagram of the sales examples?
I don't think I do. Maybe I should make one real quick.
That would really help me translate the diagram into the code.
Yeah, let me think.
I could try and do the same thing on log, but there's not as much replication or duplication of that.
Let me do file. Let's see, open folder, sale example. Actually, I want to go a little deeper. File, open folder, sales example, sale items, sale example. All right. One of the things I'm finding is I get various things in too many folders. Okay, so I have, let's, one of the things I'm going to do with this is, for now. All right, so I did the item, and I did the order item. Let's do the order. So,
That'd be great. Yeah, they just-
yeah, I can do that. So this will be order. That's actually. Almost got it. So I got order item. I think I got everything except payment. Payment, I believe, just has string function. It has payment amount. All right, so, and that comes from, I'm not sure what kind of line I want for that. It's created in here. I guess it could have, again, the relationships don't have much to do with actual coding except for how. So I think this is pretty much what I have,
Right, okay. Thank you so
except
much.
for the run. Do you want the run on there too? So first thing I will do is I'll put it in the blog and then I'll put a link to it in the blog as well. So you can actually look at that.
It's okay if based on this we change our.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yours were really complex. Yours were fairly real. It's